we are in the middle of a topic. I'm talking about communication, and you're like, Jackson, you got it wrong. You got to do this. Feel free to bring that to to the audience's attention, because I want my audience to have the absolute best when it comes to communication and understanding how visionary communication impacts their ability to succeed, and the cleanliness of your website, the way you show up as a human being, you specifically, the way that you received us as our link to be on the show today even came a little bit late. You've already exercised certain leadership characteristics that have me saying, "Whoa, okay, we gotta extract as much as we can from you while we're here." So thank you for being here today, Dr. Michael.
It's a pleasure. Great to be here, Jackson.
Absolutely. So you're gonna hit hard, right? You'll banter with me on this, right?
Actually, Rocky is one of my favorite movies, and it very much looks like we should dig into that because there's so much to learn for leadership, but also for like communication from that movie. So it's definitely a match here.
Off to the races. All right, with Dr. Gerharz, we're gonna dive right in Rocky style. So Adrian. All right, so let's hear it, man. What communication sounds so simple and so rudimentary, so easy. Visionaries who love this show, you guys know how hard it is. You know that we are all babies basically when it comes to communicating. We've got so much to learn. Let's hit hard though. Where do we start?
You know what? The irony here is that, well, communication is simple, and the best communication often is the simplest communication. But somehow we've been raised to think like we need to chase the fancy words, the eloquent language, the complex sentences. When, well, every time we're sitting on the other side of the table, we dig those people who, well, find the simple words to express complex ideas rather than the other way around. So that's basically, well, we could call it a day at that, right? Just, well, if you're
Yes.
looking for the best ways to express your thoughts, just say it plain and simply. Say what you want to say in the plainest and simplest way, and that's it.
I love it. I do almost want to wrap up the podcast. Yet, I hope that those of you listening in pay attention to our behavior patterns, just our habits of doing just that. That's going to, it's hard to create that atomic habit sometimes of being able to keep it as simple as possible. Um, Great friend of mine. His name's Matt Lytle. Shout out to Matt. He owns 5% of Able Health, one of our clients' companies. And he earned that working with us. He introduced Able Health to us. So Matt and I on Saturday, we were in a deep dive conversation about the avoidant attachment personality disorder. And I had never heard of this before. I've researched a lot of psychology, and I was like, man, I love finding things I've never heard of before. And so I went down this super strong path of learning about the four attachment types that exist. And he mentioned something else, some fancy word, and I said, "Is that the flux capacitor?" From Back to the Future. Like I don't get it. And we had this exact same conversation about keeping things simple and being able to, I think the art of an expert is somebody who's able to take a complex subject and distill it down for a child to be able to understand it. What are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more, right? I admire the people who find simple words to express complex thoughts rather than the other way around. But somehow there's this misconception that it makes us appear professional when we use like the professional jargon, or it makes us appear intelligent when we're able to juggle these complex sentences with these fancy words that we've picked up in the dictionary, right? When actually it's the other way around. When the people who make us feel smart are the ones who allow us to see things that might even have been familiar with us in a
Mhm.
much more profound and simple way, who find those brilliant metaphors that somehow click because we're so familiar with those for since like the all of our lives, and it somehow clicks for a thing that, well, we thought we had already understood, but now it makes so much more sense because not because they found more complex, more eloquent words, they found simpler examples.
I love it. Absolutely. And that's really the point of Vision Pros, and why we focus so much on vision is because most visionaries don't know how to clarify their message to the world. They understand it, of course. If you have your own vision, like it's yours, and then learning how to express it in a way that other people can then share and adopt that vision and appreciate it, it can take a little bit of work to figure out what are the words that will help do that. We're going to use one other aspect for you podcasters out there. Go ahead. You got a thought before I go into the next aspect?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's that trap, right? For visionaries, for people who are passionate about the things that they do, that they show up with kind of the desire that people appreciate that brilliance. They appreciate all the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that we put into crafting that idea or building that product. And so we try to, well, explain everything and go deep down into the details, under the surface, deep down into the complexity, when that's not at all what the communication is about. When we first of all need to make them curious for that thing. When, well, that they don't show up because they want to cheer for our brilliance. They want us to cheer for their brilliance. And so it's not about us, well, explaining everything that we know, but finding the simplest entrance for them into our ideas.
Absolutely. It's funny, communication can be done so well without words too. And there's a couple of great examples of that I'd like to highlight. One, there's a story of an auctioneer, and the auctioneer is auctioning off an old violin, and a couple people, raise their hand for a few dollars, but it's not going anywhere. And this old man walks up to the front of the room, and he's a master violinist, and he plays 30 seconds of the most beautiful song on this violin, and then he goes and sits back down, and the violin gets auctions for thousands and thousands of dollars. And it had nothing to do with the words that were said, right? The communication transcended the words. In podcasting, we have an opportunity to do the same thing. And, there's a lot of people listening in that are getting into that space, as you should. I mean, the president's, the nominations of the United States, that whole situation, the campaigns, they went on a lot of podcasts this year, and that became a big hot ticket item. There's so many opportunities that exist with podcasting. And I have nothing against fancy studios. In fact, I really like them. Shout out to Junaid Ahmed of HomeStudioMastery.com. He builds amazing podcast studios that communicates a certain depth and presence and power. And I like my studio setup. It's my home office. I've got my books, I've got my guitar. I didn't really plan it out that much. And when I moved in here, you would see half the books on the shelf, and you would see like the nothing was behind me, right? It was just a room, and I've got my microphone. It's a lot of fun, and it's like $30. I've used it for 10 years. And so those things kind of matter, but I think a lot of people get caught up in the false narrative, and a lot of people get caught up on the vanity of it. Then comes Dr. Michael Gerharz, right? And you've got a beautiful black background. You do your hair well. You show up professionally dressed. You got your ear pods. You're ready to go. You got a great smile on your face. And it's that simple. You look like Joni Ivy with a black background instead of a white background, the old spokesman for Apple, right? And there's something amazing about simplification that, again, transcends words. Can you talk about that?
I think that hits on a profound truth that has so many different angles to it, where like simple beats complex almost every time, but also passionate beats eloquent almost every time, and tangible beats fancy every time. I mean, yeah, you can have that fancy background, but if the things that you're speaking about or talking to with your guest doesn't kind of resonate with your audience, if it's not tangible for them, then your background and all the fancy things that you could that you've put so much effort in won't make it any more resonant, right? And that's actually the profound difference between what I like to call wow versus aha effect, because I see that so many so many people in the communications industry are concerned with the former, with the wow effect. Um, and
Yes.
well, that has its place, but it's also kind of, well, low hanging fruit in a way, because, well, wow effects in a way are easy. It's basically a money problem. You can throw money at that problem and solve it. So you want some wow for your presentation? Hire Taylor Swift. That's about how
That's
wow
right.
it gets, right? And many businesses do that. Like, for example,
Yep.
Samsung have often put orchestras on the stage to wow the audience. But that won't get you any kind of aha unless that's built into the way that you speak, built into the language that you use, built into the ideas that you've crafted. And that is something that money cannot easily buy, because that takes thought and rigor and time and effort. That you need to think these things through. But when you have it, they will get you an advantage that no wow can buy. Plus, if you now put the wow on top of that, you're off the charts.
Ooh, so well said. It's much like putting together a fireworks show. And that's what I try to help business owners pay attention to when they're building their launches. Is you don't want to have the grand finale first, right? You don't want to have every single firework go off at the same time. All right, that type of explosion is not super. It's not super productive, and it doesn't have any type of climax or flow, language, communication, experiences. It's a lot like participating in a dance or watching a movie, and having relationships is like that too. Walt Disney World does not have the fireworks show going on all day long, right? There's a singular event that occurs, and there's a build up to it. In fact, my daughter, my 3-year-old, we were as for no, I had kids 6, 3, and 5. My 5-year-old, we went Disneyland for the first time. They selected her from the crowd to turn the lights off at Disneyland for the event to start, the parade to start. And so she waved her magic wand, and boom, all the lights went out. It was the
Wow.
most magical experience for us as a family, and obviously for her. Can you imagine what that would feel
Absolutely.
like for a 5-year-old? Like, it was so cool. So the theatrics can certainly take they can contribute. And if that's it, right? If you don't have a park, if you don't have other experiences that go along with it, then it can fall on deaf ears. It can look awful. I'm going to use Larry King as an example for this. So thank you, Ollie Gardner of Unbounce, one of the founders of Unbounce. And, he talks about how this is a very powerful slide deck. It's one of my favorite presentations I've ever seen. It's about conversion rate optimization. And what he found was the when you look at that image with the celebrity there, only 6% of people answered that website was about business loans. And you don't have a long time to capture the attention of somebody when they go to the website. But when they removed Larry, 36% answered that it was about business loans. And so in this case study, 500% increase occurred when they got rid of Larry from that page. Now, that's an oversimplified representation of
Mhm.
how conversion rate optimization works and what goes into it. But the point is, the variables, they can distract. They can cause people to miss out on opportunities. There's effective ways to include people, and there's extremely ineffective ways to include people, like Taylor Swift running onto a football field during the middle of the fourth quarter. Right, not exactly appropriate. We want to strategically plan things out like this as visionaries who have visions to communicate with the world in order for them to understand. So we might come back and actually look at some examples. I want your permission for that, Dr. Gerharz. If we do, I've got some sizzle reels from past guests that might be kind of fun to analyze. Would that be a good use of our time, or would that be a distraction from what you want to talk about today? I want the audience to get the most out of what we do.
Well, I think you know your audience best. So if you think that that's what your audience would love to see, well, Why not have some
We might
fun
play
with
with
that?
this. We might
Yeah.
absolutely play with that. So um, let's first find out. Let's make sure to extract some resources from you. So for the visionary leaders listening, and you've been on your journey. I don't think you were born with all the things you've learned and know today. So what's gotten you to where you are? What are 3 resources that can help other visionaries along their path that have helped you?
Um, so what certainly has contributed to bringing me to where I am is writing down, and putting your thoughts on paper, because while you're circling them in your mind, thoughts have that tendency to, well, stay a little bit fuzzy. Like it feels like we have that inner clarity, but
Mm-hmm.
well, but it at the moment that we try to articulate them, well, we feel like that. Well, it's not that clear, right? And when we explain it to our best friend, or even to a colleague, or worse, a customer for the first time, somehow it feels like, well, they didn't get that. They might even respond with a blank stare. But when we write it down, we have 2 tools immediately available. First of all, we have committed to one way of saying it, and then our logical brains can analyze that. So does that really make sense? And also our guts can help with that, because they can kick in with the feelings and emotions. So does that feel right? And more importantly, does it make me feel excited? Because if I'm not excited,
Mm,
who else would be, right? So writing it down is certainly the first resource.
that's huge. Nobody has said that. I think we've had over 1,000 guests, and nobody has ever said writing. But the person who I remember last saying that over 10 years ago, John Assaraf, who's on The Secret, he's got his NLP program. He talked about the neuro thingies, like that connect our brain to our physical body, and it's different than typing, because when
Yeah,
you draw the letters, right, you're registering to
yeah,
your memory and to emotions. And I was like, whoa, that just felt right as he talked about it. So thank you.
yeah.
Writing, what else?
So the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is certainly a resource that you can't live without. I mean, first of all, it has that important front page where where it says in bold letters, "Don't panic," which is about the most valuable advice you could ever get. Um, but it also teaches us one of the most profound lessons that I think any entrepreneur, any visionary, basically anyone can learn in their lives. And that has to do with, so I hope I'm not spoiling for too many people, because I think it's a very well-known book. So by now you probably heard that
You are,
42.
you are, and I want you to. Here's why. I somehow, one, nobody's mentioned it. Again, nobody has mentioned that book.
Wow.
I have
So
not heard about that book in at least 15. I want to say, maybe I'm wrong. Like, it's that far back in my registrar. I don't know what it is.
you gotta read it. It's the most hilarious, most profound book that you'll read, at least for the rest of this year, if not like for a very long time. Um, so, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is that brilliant book by Douglas Adams, um, which has, I mean, so many hilarious things happening to the main character Arthur Dent, but also to Earth, which unfortunately, well, has to well, explodes, right? So it's just in the way for an intergalactic highway. So it's just that hilarious. But I think the point that I was up to, and the reason I mentioned this book is because of the conclusion of the book, where it leads to that. Well, finally we get to learn the answer to the ultimate question about life, universe, and all the rest, right? And it turns out that after millions of years of computing, that supercomputer that was built to answer that question replies with a very simple answer, and it's 42. So that's the answer to the ultimate question about life, universe, and all the rest.
Oh, oh no, I lost you. I lost you. I wanted to ask about that. We'll see if Dr. Gerharz is back in just a second. While we're wondering what happened with the technology here, we're going to actually start the review process of these sizzle reels. And we'll start with Pete Sena's sizzle reel of digital surgeons. Then we'll go into
So
Miss T's sizzle reel. And
so
then
it
we'll go into
looks
Kareem's.
So
I figured we'd take a little break on
yeah,
the sizzle reels while you're out. But did you say the answer is 42?
yeah. So, and of course, until the point is that, well, finally everyone realizes, so wait a second, what is the question actually? So no one bothered to ask the question, right? So this is the answer to the ultimate question, but what is the question? And that is so spot on to the times that we're living in, right? I mean, everyone's got an opinion and answers to basically everything that you throw at them. But we take too many occasions to take a step back and ask, so wait a second, what's the question that we're trying to answer here? What is actually the problem here?
Yes.
And so we don't spend enough time agreeing on the questions, but spend so much time on arguing over the right answers when we haven't figured out the proper question.
So much time. Such an opportunity. I can't wait to read that. And you know what? I was going to go into the B-rolls, the B-roll for, what are they called? The scissor reels for people. But we got one more awesome resource. What is it?
It's another book. It's The Power of Habit, because that's really what drives us humans, right? By Charles Duhigg, and where we learn where he makes that brilliant case of how habits work, how profound an impact they have on our lives, and where we need to attack these habits to actually have a shot at modifying them. It's kind of the prequel to like the Atomic Habits, which has stormed the bestseller lists. But I found The Power of Habits to be a little bit more satisfying to read, because it has a little more background on why these things are like they are. And well, man, that author is just such a brilliant storyteller. And his new book is also a phenomenal resource, Super Communicators. So very, very appropriate and very good match to today's show. That is just a brilliant read that helps you understand. So wait a second, how do these beasts like that we call habits actually work, and why do they have such a profound impact, and why are they so hard, and where can we use communication to actually counter those?
Love it. So we are all standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And that's what these books represent as well. And it doesn't take away from the current status, because there is a certain level that has been achieved through modern ingenuity and what all of you visionaries are up to and what we're up to, and super grateful for the resources of the past that make it so much easier to move our lives forward. So without further ado, some sizzle reels with Pete Sena, Miss T, Kareem Abdel-Naga. We'll come back after we watch a little bit of each one of these.
I believe that creativity and curiosity are fundamentally broken. I think they're broken in the world, but more importantly, I think they're broken in business. How do we growth hack our brand into success, right? In order for us to engineer best in class, we have to first look at best in class. We have to deconstruct best in class, define a stake in the ground as to where we're going as a business.
One thing I learned a long time ago, I will never quit.
Her name is Tamara Sanford.
Local entrepreneur who's just landed on the Forbes magazine.
Typically, when you get on a Forbes list, it's about how much money you make.
They're specifically pointing out 50 different business owners who are also philanthropists.
There's no such thing as I can't.
This is just stuff that it took me years to learn, but if you can learn it now, you'll be able to manage a class and pull excellence out of anybody that you're working with, and that's what you want.
Standing beside me is governing board member Kareem Abdel-Naga.
Kareem Abdel-Naga is CEO and co-founder of Practice Makes Perfect. Kareem was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list.
His TED Talk was named one of the most inspiring speeches of 2017.
Clap 3 times if you can hear me.
7 years ago, I started to reform our public education system. What's even more exciting is that if we can prevent 5 months of lost time just by redesigning 2 months, imagine the possibilities that we can unlock by tackling the rest of the calendar year.
What are some of the...
All right. So those are 3 sizzle reels we've received from people who come in, and all of them have All of them are fantastic leaders, by the way. They're people I greatly look up to, who've tackled amazing world problems, and are continuing to contribute to society in great ways. I want to hear from the art of communication specialists. What can we learn? What can we take away from as visionaries who are maybe just getting started or don't have sizzle reels like that we can pay attention to have that type of impact with our visions?
I think one of the most obvious things that I saw in all three of those is that they talked about a profound desire in the audience. And that might bring us back to Rocky. Because Rocky works basically very much the same way. The thing with great movies is that we look at the hero, but what we see is basically us. So we see ourselves in the hero. And we could be that guy that, Rocky is that guy that feels like he's got it all in him, but he just, never got the chance, and life's just been unfair to him. And if only he ever get that phone call, and he would show the whole world how that he's got the champion in him, right? And he's that lucky guy for whom the phone finally rings. And so when we watch that movie, in a way we somehow think like, that could be us, right? So if the phone rang for us, and like the New York Times rang up, or let's say Oprah rang up, and we would get the chance to show the world our brilliance, we would of course give it our all, just like Rocky did. And I think that those reels use the same principle, that they positioned the three guys as the heroes of the reel, but they also allowed the viewer a spot in that story. Like, I could be the one who refuses to quit. I could be the person who says the sentence "I can" doesn't exist in my world, and that is something that we won for ourselves. And so what those reels did is that they gave me a spot on the hero's pedestal, rather than kind of claiming it solely for ourselves, for the person who's advertised here. We give them, we share it with the audience, and that's so much more relatable for them.
Huge. The sharing aspect. As a musician myself, the choice of music too is a massive impact in these types of sizzle reels. The timing of the impact of the music, it shifts the emotional importance and perception of what's being said. And that can be used to manipulate, of course, but music is a resource just like anything else. Water can be used to destroy and drown. Water can also be used to uplift. And so we do have a responsibility as visionaries to combine the right message with the right music, or the right movement, or the right video, all that at the same time. And if we don't hit it, you won't have the impact that you want. You talked about better words mean better business on your website. I love that tagline, and how you might be one call away. There you go, back to that Rocky reference. You've also got the new book, The Path to Strategic Impact. And so if do you have a path? That's a dumb question. Is there kind of an outline of how do we get from I think I've got a vision, I feel good about it, to I'm ready to share my vision the right way, as fast and as efficient as possible? What's that framework look like for somebody who's trying to put that together?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to appreciate that this is likely a journey, right? It's not about like having that stroke of insight and just having it immediately figured out and being right and once and forever. It's much more a process about getting it right eventually, where conversations with your customers, with your audience, play a huge part, but also the conversations with your friends who might not get your idea. They play a huge part in finding those better words. So one tool that I found very, very useful, and one question that I will ask you very early on, if you would work with me, is, so what's the pass along of your communication? So let me explain that concept. So suppose you're called on the TED stage, and you get the chance to give that keynote, that TED keynote, and there's like 6,000 people in the audience, but also like 2 million people watching it on YouTube. And now if they come home from the conference, or they meet their friend after having watched the video, and they ask them, so wait a second, you've watched that talk by Jackson, but what was it actually about? And so what are they going to reply? And that's what I call the pass along phrase, right? Wow. What are they going to pass along? And the thing is that this is never going to be like 30 slides with 6 bullet points each. It's never like a 12-page report that they've read from you. It's always more like 1 or 2 sentences in very simple language that they are familiar with.
Huge.
And what I observe so often is that so many communicators, especially those who are passionate about the things that they do, they delegate the task of figuring out that pass-along phrase to the audience. They basically throw everything they are passionate about at the audience, hoping that something sticks, and basically delegating that task of what's the pass-along here to the audience. And I think that's almost always a bad choice. You should take ownership of that. You should spend a lot of time thinking about, so what do I actually want them to pass along? And once you have that, then you can build a path. You can bridge the gap from where they are today to what you need them to see, so that they will actually pass that along.
My goodness, that is huge. I've never heard anybody teach this before. Maybe I've had my ears closed. Right. It's possible that I've just overlooked it, and I wasn't ready for this type of information. In fact, I can see how scary that can feel. Right. Because especially for somebody with an entrepreneurial mindset that's built around like the laws of scarcity. Like, no, my gosh, I don't want people to know about this because somebody's going to take my concept or take my idea and run with it. Right. That's going to limit anybody from wanting to do this, those people. And then the second side of it is that there's a responsibility factor that comes with, man, if my message gets passed around the world, right, what is that? What's going to happen to my reputation as that takes off? Right. There's a huge factor of fear of failure, fear of success that can come along with the responsibility of this type of thinking and hitting a message like this. The weight of what that means. That's we design irresistible messages ourselves. I love the title of your podcast, by the way, Irresistible Communication. And you got that Keanu Reeves effect going on, the John Wick style. So it's a good looking photo, man. So irresistibility is something that Video Power Marketing, we learned a lot about. I learned a lot about it there, videopower.com. They designed some of the most viral video ad campaigns of all time. But I've never thought about combining that aspect with what you're talking about, but you make it so clear. It's like Sir Ken Robinson, I think his name is, the one that gave the most popular TED Talk of all time. Mm-hmm. What's his pass along? Reform child education. Like, I saw that 15 years ago or so, and I still know and remember that. And other people whose TED Talks I've seen, I may not remember their name, Johan, I can't remember his last name. Everything we know about addiction is wrong, right? What's the message? Fix it. Create belonging. And get people involved in communities, right? Those concepts are so easy to remember and regurgitate, and you have a framework for helping us do that, and you just shared it. and I'm extremely honored. That's amazing. Anything you want to add before I cut to a break? Because I almost don't want to go to a break. I just want to use your time to find out more.
I think, well, yeah. But first of all, thanks that you like that so much, and hope you hope some of your audience can make good use of it. But yeah,
we will use that every day
that,
at First Class Business. We will be using that every day, Dr.
Gerharz. I really think that's one of the most profound things, and it helps you swallow a bitter pill in communication, which I like to call rule number one. Basically, I think the only real rule that there is in communication, and that is, if they didn't get it, they didn't get it, right? So if your audience didn't get it, they didn't get it. There's no use in arguing that you meant it slightly differently, or that you mentioned it on slide 13, bullet point 6. They didn't get that. So, and they didn't get your pass along. And so that's nothing to, shy away from or feel bad about. That's just what happens at times. But it's also information. It helps you find the weak spots. So digging deep on. So what exactly did they not get? Why did they miss that important piece that I gave with that anecdote that I shared? Why did they miss that? And then we can refine it and tweak it, and ultimately and eventually arrive at something that's way more profound than our first take.
Huge. I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King was not his first speech, as far as I know.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
Exactly.
Exactly. Elon Musk, Model 3, right? The Tesla Model 3, he was scrutinized. The market was bare on what he was doing. They said he was never going to succeed with it. And now nobody can even fathom the idea of Tesla failing.
And that is so true. And that's the misconception here. I mean, that first failed attempt, that scares the hell out of a lot of people. But the truth is, you gotta get your worst effort behind you, because that's just the truth. Your first speech is not gonna be your best speech, at least not if you dare to make a second or a third one. But you got to get that first speech out. You got to give it, and if you have the courage to learn from it, to learn from the blank stares of your audience, to blank from the polite applause when you expected the standing ovations, that's where growth happens. And then when you did your 20th speech, that's when you start to get good. And when you're at your 100th, you're pretty good. But the truth is that every one of those brilliant keynote speakers that you've seen at shows, they give that same exact keynote 100 times a year at least. So, and they've done 1,000 speeches at least. That's how they became good.
Oh, this is so important. Let's cover another couple angles on this. Imagine being Charlie from Charlie Bit My Finger, right? One of the first original YouTube hit videos out there is, brother, finger gets bit and he's like, Charlie bit my finger. And having to try to carve a legacy out after being known as that kid. It's like, how many people are going to walk up to you and be like, hey, bite my finger? Annoy the heck out of you about that. This is really a true thing, guys. Breaking Bad, Jesse from Breaking Bad, if you look up interviews, he was pretty traumatized and frustrated with society that people wanted him to walk up and say his famous quote. It's something obscure and dark, but he hated the fact that everybody wanted him to come up to him on the street and say the quote, or would say the quote to him derogatorily, and that messes with you. So the first failed attempts, I'm grateful that my first failed attempts are not what I'm known for the rest of my life. I've got other things that I need to do. So sometimes we might have the blessing / curse of going famous and viral on day one. And sometimes we might have the blessing and curse of it taking a bit longer. One thing that Dr. Gerharz talked about earlier that we honor a lot at First Class Business and Vision Pros Live is the journey. right? Learning to be present in the moment and enjoy where we're at, not feeling so drawn to, you know, have to focus on the destination, to be addicted to a destination that controls us that we aren't even there to enjoy yet. Let's shift gears. I'm going to skip the entire break today. I hope you're okay with that. This is more important.
Sure.
So if this was your last chance ever to share something with an audience, what powerful lesson can other visionaries learn from your experience?
I think if there's one thing that I can leave a trail with, then it's that I learned that resonance beats persuasion. So I'd recommend to stop persuasion. Don't persuade harder, but resonate stronger. Because, well, if you're honest with yourself and you realize that someone, well, tries to sell you something that you didn't originally want to buy, and he tries to persuade you, he will probably succeed with that. And it might even make you happy, right?
Yeah.
But it also never kind of feels like, well, that was a great experience here, right? And, well, I might not have a good memory of that exchange, of that transaction. While when that same person approached the same conversation from a point of curiosity, from first of all listening to, so what matters to me? What are some of your struggles? So where do you want to improve, or how does that fit into your life? And then finds the common ground, the path that we both share, so that they might even lead me to the point of no return, where I've seen something that I didn't realize before in a way that I cannot unsee anymore, so that they wholeheartedly can leave the choice of whether I want to buy from them or not to me, because they've made their case. They know that they've listened patiently. They paid attention to what matters to me. They've made a great product that it's a great match for that. So I'd be a fool not to choose them, right? If you did that work. And if more people approach communication, entrepreneurship, building companies from that perspective, I think the world would be a better place.
100%. Y'all may have noticed, if you are watching, me sinking in my chair as I pondered, meditated, fought back tears related to what Dr. Michael Gerharz just said. My first marriage and divorce was a byproduct of me persuading harder, not resonating stronger. And when you convince somebody to marry you, when it's about, I don't think this is about, I want to honor the mother of my first 3 children as well. I don't think it was about my eye color. There's certainly many people who were attracted to me because of my eye color. Right. It wasn't about how I played the trumpet or the guitar. Although there's certainly many people who saw that side of me and wanted that part of me, and not necessarily the whole Jackson. Right. And when I faced the opportunity to court and see who my spouse was going to be, I had extremely strong skills of persuasion and charisma and charm. And I'd worked so hard on impressing people. That word of impress, it bothers me these days, because if you think about it, like if you think about the definition of impress, right, it's to make an indent on something, right? And if you're impressing others, you're making an indention on another human being's free will, or on who they are, their identity. That's not my right to do. And in marketing, we try so hard to be impressive. I say it as a world. We don't. Not a first-class business.
And sometimes to hilarious consequences. I mean, I've had clients who when we finally kind of dug out their diamonds, were blown away by the beauty of that diamond, because what they actually did with all their marketing and with all them trying to impress people was that they decorated the diamonds, right? They put like stickers on it and like and painted it in fancy colors, and then they put it on that pedestal with all these dazzling lights and so. And when they finally removed all of that, until they got to the core, polished that core. So because that's what you do with diamonds, right? You don't decorate them, you polish them. And when you let it just shine with its truest brilliance, that's what attracts people, not that overly impressive thing.
That's what attracts the right people, right? I'll add that word in there. Is because
Totally.
you can attract all of the jokers and jesters who have all of their decorated stickers and stuff too, and think that you're winning. But there's far more pretenders in the market who will gravitate towards you than there are true contenders in the market. So yeah, not everybody understands the value of a diamond, and that's okay. We're blessed. Those of you listening in, we all understand the value of the diamond. I hope there's somebody who's going, why is a diamond valuable? And looking that up right now. Good for you. Like go and find that. But when it comes to business, people often value the facade, the material, the vanity, the external. And, you can build a very lucrative business model going after that type of a market. Bruno Mars does. He made a song about it. Today I don't want to do anything. Right? What a liar. He works 60 to 80 hours per week easily, maybe more. But he knows how many people will buy that song. And so he produced a song knowing full well that a bunch of idiots will buy that song. A bunch of people who aren't thinking straight and understanding the value of life itself, like they're going to dive into that, and he manipulates the market with it. I know Jackson's rude for using a politically incorrect word. I'm not singling out a demographic. I'm not singling out an individual. It's called the agentic state. If you want to learn more about it, Stanley Milner, I think his name was, they got a great movie about it called The Experimenter. 90% plus of the world, in my opinion, is stuck in an agentic state following leaders who are not exactly, they're not who I want to follow, at least. So Dr. Gerharz, thank you so much. This quote and the importance of it, the resonance. I'm not a doctor. I don't get to help the world see with a title like that. And yet you don't leverage your status as doctor either. I tell my entrepreneurs, look, the person who says, trust me because I'm a doctor, has lost all credibility with me. Because if you have to say you're a doctor to persuade me that you know something, what do you really know? You're already failing in that capacity. And so you don't do that, but you emulate, and you just bring a gift of knowledge that I'm super grateful for today. Those of you listening in, the action steps will be below the video. We'll do our best to make sure that the right action steps are there so that you guys can get in touch with Dr. Gerharz in the best ways possible. We'll also have the resources below this episode too, so you can see where all these resources we've talked about, to follow up with them and use them. Maybe it will help you on your journey to speed up the process of finding the paths of most enjoyment as you continue to move through life. And appreciate the scenery and the circumstances when it's harder. That's going to happen. In the top right corner, we got one more call to action. It's going to say, be our guest. Take the chance. Come on our show. You don't have to be as well articulated as Dr. Gerharz is. You don't have to have a phenomenal book to come on the show. If you're out there trying to help and serve others and uplift others, we'll feel it. We'll see it. We'll walk through it together. We want you on the show if you're giving back and helping others along their journey. Dr. Gerharz, I'll let you close out today. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, since this is the Vision Pros show, perhaps I can share mine. So, because I imagine a world in which those of us who have an important story to tell, a story that has the potential to change the world, that they find the words to make that happen. I think we've spoken about a couple of ideas that can help you with that. And so my wish for today would be that as many of you as possible take those tools, find those words, and make their ideas happen. That will be phenomenal.
I love it. You heard it from Dr. Gerharz, and we've all been blessed with wisdom on how to share our communication as visionaries. We'll see you on the next episode, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building